Okay, welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to talk about one of Keats's poems, To Autumn. And this lecture is called The Dying of the Light, Keats' Time and the Sublime in To Autumn. Let's begin with a question. What does autumn mean to you? For some, it's a time of beauty, golden leaves, crisp air, and the abundance of harvest. For others, it's a time of loss. The days grow shorter, the cold creeps in, and winter looms on the horizon. John Keats's To Autumn captures both of these perspectives. This is not just a simple nature poem, it's a meditation on time, change, and the inevitable movement toward death. It's also, in many ways, Keats's farewell to poetry, to youth, and to life itself. But does the poem mourn the passing of time, or does it celebrate it? Is autumn a season of death, or is it a season of fulfillment? As we analyze this poem, keep this question in mind. Is Keats at peace with the cycle of life, or is there an unspoken sorrow beneath his words? First, a little history. Keats wrote To Autumn in September of 1819, during a period of great personal and artistic change. By this time, Keats had already composed his great odes, Ode to a Nightingale, Ode on a Grecian Urn, and Ode on Melancholy. But he was also growing increasingly ill with tuberculosis. He knew that his time as a poet, and perhaps as a living man, was coming to an end. Unlike his earlier poems, which are filled with longing, grief, and struggle, To Autumn feels different. There's no overt despair, no frantic desire to escape. Instead, Keats seems to accept the passage of time and to see beauty even in decline. Critic Harold Bloom in The Visionary Company describes To Autumn as, quote, the most perfect expression of Keats's philosophy, an ode that neither mourns nor fears but simply exists, reveling in the fullness of the present, end quote. But is this poem truly peaceful? Or is there something unsaid, something lurking beneath its golden surface? Let's take a closer line-by-line look. In stanza 1, season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun. Keats begins with a tone of richness and warmth. Autumn is not a season of decay, it is a time of ripeness, of fulfillment. Notice the phrase mellow fruitfulness. Keats emphasizes softness, warmth, the fullness of the earth. And yet, look at the word maturing. What does this suggest? That the sun, like everything else, is aging. This is not the youthful energy of spring, nor the scorching power of summer. This is a season on the verge of change. Does that make it more beautiful or more fleeting? And fill all fruit with ripeness to the core. Look at the emphasis on completion. Everything is at its peak. But what happens after something reaches its peak? Think about a piece of fruit. When it is at its ripest, it is also closest to spoiling. Is Keats celebrating autumn, or is he subtly reminding us that all things pass? Let's continue with stanza 2. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor. In this stanza, Keats does something remarkable. He personifies autumn, turning it into a living figure. How does he describe it? Sitting, resting, relaxed. This is not the youthful energy of spring, nor the urgent heat of summer. This is leisure, satisfaction. And yet, there is something unsettling about this. Shouldn't autumn be preparing for winter? Shouldn't it be doing something? Instead, it's just careless. Critic M.H. Abrams in Natural Supernaturalism suggests that this moment represents a turning point in Keats's poetic vision. Abrams writes, instead of longing for an escape from time, Keats embraces the stillness of the present. He accepts that the cycle of life is beyond his control. End quote. But is this acceptance or resignation? If autumn is resting, is it because it knows that its time is nearly up? Stanza 3. Where are the songs of spring? Aye, where are they? Here we see the first real hint of loss. Keats directly acknowledges what has been absent from the poem: spring, the time of youth, of new beginnings, of hope. But notice what he does next. Think not of them, thou hast thy music too. Keats refuses to mourn. Instead, he insists that autumn has its own beauty. But is this genuine, or is it a kind of self reassurance? Then, in a wailful choir, the small gnats mourn. Look at the word wailful for the first time. Keats introduces an image of sorrow. The gnats mourn. But why? Are they mourning the end of autumn? Or are they simply part of the natural cycle of life? What do you think? Is Keats genuinely at peace, or is there a quiet sadness in the music of autumn? And finally, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies. The last image of the poem is birds preparing to leave. Unlike the nightingale in Ode to a Nightingale, these birds are not immortal. They are migrating. They are leaving. So what does this tell us? Is this Keats's way of saying goodbye? Is he watching everything around him prepare for departure, knowing that he too will soon be gone? Critic Helen Wendler, in the Odes of John Keats, argues that To Autumn is Keats's farewell to poetry itself, a final ode before he accepts his fate. But does it feel like a sad farewell? Or is there peace in knowing that everything has its season? How should we read this poem? And what is autumn really about? Is it a celebration of ripeness, warmth, and fulfillment? Is it a meditation on time and the inevitability of change? Or is it a farewell, an elegy for a life and a career that Keats knew was slipping away? Or is it all of these things at once? Keats doesn't tell us how to feel. He simply shows us autumn, its beauty, its stillness, its quiet decline. And so I leave you with this question. If you knew winter was coming, would you spend autumn mourning, or would you savor every golden day?